Have you ever noticed that the moment you start healing, the moment you finally choose yourself, certain people suddenly become obsessed with destroying that peace? It's not random. And here's the part that will change everything you think you know about toxic people. They don't target weakness. They target the exact moment you stop pretending to be weak. Let me show you what I mean. There's a woman I'll call Sarah. For years, she bent herself into impossible shapes for her family. She was the peacekeeper, the understanding one, the person everyone called when they needed something, but never when she needed anything. And she wore that identity like armor. Until one day, she didn't. She set one simple boundary. She said no to hosting Thanksgiving. Just once. And the reaction was volcanic. Suddenly, she was selfish. Suddenly, she had changed. Suddenly, she was the problem that needed to be fixed. But here's what Sarah didn't understand at first. Her boundary wasn't the problem. Her boundary exposed the system. And toxic people will burn down the entire relationship before they'll let you expose what they've been hiding. This is about you, though, not Sarah, because if you're watching this, you felt it too. That specific moment when someone who claimed to love you turned cold the second you stopped performing, the second you stopped absorbing their chaos, the second you chose your own peace over their comfort. And you probably asked yourself the question that keeps most people trapped for years. What did I do wrong? But that question is the trap itself, because it assumes their targeting is about your behavior. And I need you to hear this clearly. It never was. Toxic people don't target you because you did something wrong. They target you because you stopped doing something for them. And what you stopped doing was regulating their emotions, validating their existence, and proving through your constant availability that they matter. You were their mirror, and the moment you stopped reflecting back the version of themselves they needed to see, you became the enemy. Let me take you deeper into the psychology of this, because this is where most explanations get it wrong. Therapists consistently observe something in people who destabilize others. These individuals have what clinicians call a fragile sense of self. Now, this doesn't mean they look fragile. Many of them are confident, charismatic, even magnetic. But beneath that performance, their internal world is collapsing. They don't have a stable core. They don't know who they are without someone else's reaction telling them. And that's not dramatic language. That's their lived reality. They rely on your emotional responses, your attention, your anxiety, your care, to feel like they exist at all. When you were accommodating, when you were reactive, when you were endlessly available, you were giving them something they couldn't generate internally, a sense of coherence, a sense of importance, a sense of being real. You were their emotional supply, and you didn't know it. You thought you were just being kind. You thought you were being loving. You thought you were being a good person. But to them, your kindness wasn't love. It was utility. Your empathy wasn't connection, it was a resource. And the moment you stopped providing that resource, the moment you started choosing yourself, they didn't experience it as your growth. They experienced it as your betrayal, as your abandonment, as the loss of the one thing keeping their internal chaos from consuming them. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because what they do next isn't about punishing you. It's about survival. When you pull away, when you set a boundary, when you stop playing the role they assigned you, their nervous system interprets it as a threat to their existence. And threatened people don't respond with reason. They respond with control, with manipulation, with making you feel like you're the one who's suddenly cold, suddenly difficult, suddenly broken. They reframe your self-respect as cruelty, your boundary as rejection, your clarity as the problem that needs to be fixed. This is the psychology of targeting. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But here's the question nobody wants to ask, and it's the question that changes everything. If you've noticed this pattern repeating, if you've seen this dynamic play out across multiple relationships, multiple jobs, multiple friendships, there's something deeper happening. And the question is this: why do you keep ending up close to people like this? Stay with me here, because this isn't about blame. This is about pattern recognition. This is about understanding that most of us aren't randomly encountering toxic people. We're unconsciously drawn to them, or more accurately, we're unconsciously familiar with them. And in the world of attachment, familiarity doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like home. The child you once were is still negotiating safety inside your adult relationships. Let me explain what that means. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where attention required performance, where closeness meant tolerating harm, your nervous system learned something devastating. It learned that love and pain come together. It learned that to be cared for, you have to be useful. It learned that your worth is measured by how much you can tolerate without breaking. And that child, the one who learned those lessons, doesn't disappear when you become an adult. That child is still inside you, still trying to solve the same unsolvable problem. If I just try hard enough, if I just love well enough, if I just prove myself enough, maybe this time I'll finally be safe. And toxic people sense that. Not consciously, but their nervous system recognizes yours because they learned the same lessons, just from a different angle. You learned to give endlessly. They learned to take endlessly. You learned to erase yourself. They learned to consume others. And when those two survival strategies meet, they lock together like puzzle pieces, and both people mistake that fit for love. But it's not love. It's just two wounded people reenacting their childhoods and calling it connection. This is what Jungian psychology calls the shadow, the disowned parts of yourself that you were taught to reject. And one of the shadow's cruelest patterns is this. It will draw you toward people who embody the qualities you've suppressed. If you were taught that anger makes you unlovable, you'll find yourself drawn to people who are volatile. If you were taught that your needs are a burden, you'll find yourself drawn to people who are endlessly needy. If you were taught that having boundaries makes you selfish, you'll find yourself drawn to people who have none. And those people will target you. Not because you're weak, but because you're resonant. Because something in you is still trying to resolve an old wound by replaying it, and something in them is looking for someone who will stay while they replay theirs. Now, here's where this gets even more layered. And this is the part that might make you angry, but anger is useful here. Anger is information. Because there's a reason toxic people often escalate their targeting right when you're on the edge of a real breakthrough, right when you're about to step into a more whole, more honest, more integrated version of yourself. And that timing isn't coincidence. It's psychologically predictable. There's something in psychology called the persona. It's the mask you wear to be acceptable, to be loved, to be safe. And for people who grew up in unstable environments, the persona becomes everything. It becomes the only version of yourself you're allowed to show. But underneath that mask is something more real, something raw, something that's been waiting its entire life to be seen. And when that realness starts pushing through, when it starts demanding space, when it starts insisting that you stop performing and start being, it threatens every relationship that was built on the performance. Toxic people feel this shift before you're even fully conscious of it. They sense it in your tone, in your pauses, in the way you stop over-explaining yourself, in the way you stop apologizing for taking up space. And they don't react with curiosity. They don't celebrate your growth. They sabotage it. They destabilize you. They pull you back into the role that kept them comfortable. Because your evolution isn't just about you becoming more whole, it's about the entire dynamic collapsing. If you change, the system changes. And for people who've built their entire identity on controlling others, change feels like death. So they target you harder. They criticize you more sharply. They make you question whether this new version of yourself is even worth becoming. And if you're not psychologically prepared, you'll abandon yourself just to restore the peace. You'll return to the persona. You'll suppress the realness. You'll stay small. And you'll convince yourself it's love. But it's not love. And the exhausted, resentful, quietly screaming part of you has always known that. Let me tell you what happens when you finally wake up, when you finally see the pattern clearly, when you realize that the person who's been making you feel unstable, guilty, and small isn't reacting to who you are. They're reacting to the fact that you're no longer who they need you to be. This moment is deeply disorienting because you're experiencing what therapists call cognitive dissonance. On one level, you know something is wrong. You feel the manipulation. You recognize the inconsistency. You see the punishment disguised as concern. But on another level, you've been conditioned your entire life to doubt your own perception, to assume that if someone is upset with you, you must deserve it, to believe that real love requires endless patience, endless understanding, endless self-erasure. And toxic people are extraordinarily skilled at exploiting that doubt. They'll tell you you're overreacting, that you're too sensitive, that you've changed for the worse. They'll reframe your self-respect as arrogance. Your boundary is cruelty, your peace as coldness. And here's the devastating part. If you're not grounded in your own truth, you'll believe them. You'll perform the old role again. You'll shrink again, because shrinking feels like peace. But it's not peace. It's just the absence of conflict, and those are not the same thing. Clinical psychology recognizes this dynamic as coercive control, and it doesn't always look like yelling or threats. Sometimes it's quiet. It's a sigh, a tone, a subtle withdrawal of warmth that sends you scrambling to fix something you never broke. It's the unspoken message that your worth is conditional on your compliance. And the second you stop complying, your worth is revoked. But here's the truth they'll never tell you. That revocation isn't about your worth, it's about their terror. Because the moment you stop reflecting them, the moment you stop participating in their script, they're forced to face the question they've been running from their entire life. Who am I if nobody is taking care of me? And that question is unbearable. So instead of sitting with it, instead of doing the hard, humbling work of building a self from the inside out, they project it onto you. They make you the villain. They make your growth the betrayal. They make your self-respect the wound. And if you're not careful, you'll carry that projection as if it's truth. But let me show you the way out, because there is one, and it starts with a shift in the question you're asking. Most people stay stuck because they keep asking, why are they targeting me? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, why am I still here? Not in judgment, not in self-attack, but in genuine curiosity. Because here's the reality that nobody wants to say out loud. You can't control whether toxic people target you. You can't prevent their projection. You can't fix their wounds. You can't love them into wholeness. You can't explain yourself into being seen. But you can decide whether you stay in range. And that decision, that quiet, devastating, liberating decision, is where all your power lives. Not in being strong enough to endure, but in being honest enough to admit that enduring isn't healing. That loyalty to dysfunction is just self-abandonment in disguise. That staying isn't love, it's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being seen as the one who gave up. Fear of proving that maybe you're not as patient, as understanding, as good as you thought you were. But here's what that fear is protecting you from realizing. Those aren't virtues. They're survival strategies you learned as a child, and you're not a child anymore. This is the real work. Not building thicker skin, not learning to tolerate more, but building a more honest relationship with yourself. Learning to trust your discomfort, to honor your instinct, to stop treating your boundaries like violence and start treating them like dignity. It's recognizing that people who punish you for growing were never going to celebrate the fullness of who you are. They were only ever going to celebrate the parts of you that kept them comfortable. And yes, that realization is painful. It should be, because grief is the price of awareness. You're not just losing a relationship, you're losing the fantasy. The fantasy that if you just tried harder, explained better, loved more carefully, they'd finally see you. But they won't. Not because you're not enough, but because they're not looking. They're not capable of looking. And you cannot force vision onto someone who's committed to staying blind. What you can do is stop performing for an audience that was never going to applaud. Stop waiting for permission to be whole. Stop treating your emotional truth like something that needs approval. And start building a life where the people around you don't need you to be smaller for them to feel safe. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's not coldness. That's self-preservation. That's not giving up on people. That's finally choosing yourself. And here's what nobody tells you about that choice. The people who love you, really love you, won't experience your boundaries as rejection. They'll experience them as invitation. An invitation to meet you where you actually are instead of where they need you to be. And the people who can't do that, the people who experience your wholeness as a threat, were never relating to you in the first place. They were relating to a version of you that didn't exist, a version they needed you to play so they wouldn't have to face themselves. So let them be uncomfortable. Let them rewrite the story. Let them tell everyone you're cold, difficult, changed, because their narrative was never about truth. It was about control. And the moment you stop defending yourself, the moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop performing, you've already won. Not because you've defeated them, but because you've remembered something they tried to make you forget. You've remembered who you are beneath the conditioning, beneath the performance, beneath the fear that taught you love is something you earn by disappearing. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotional storms. You are not responsible for staying small so they can feel big. You are not responsible for maintaining a relationship that requires you to betray yourself. And recognizing that isn't selfish. It's survival. It's sanity. It's the beginning of the life you've been too afraid to claim, because claiming it meant admitting that some people were never going to come with you. And that's okay. It has to be okay. Because the alternative is spending your entire life waiting for people to give you permission to be yourself. And that permission will never come. Not from them. It only comes from you. Healing doesn't make you softer. It makes you honest. And honesty is what sustains real love. If this resonated deep in your chest, if you felt something shift while listening, subscribe now. Not for me, for you. Because understanding yourself at this level isn't just helpful, it's life-changing. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And if someone you care about is finally waking up to their worth, share this with them. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remind someone they're not alone in seeing clearly.